If you're familiar with my channel, you likely know by now the significance that Final Fantasy IX has had on my life. I've talked many times on videos and streams and on the Discord about the layers of meaning that it has to me personally, but until now I had yet to make a formal video about it. So if you're a channel regular, you've likely heard all of this a million times before. Go ahead and skip over this one if you'd like, but it was very important to me that this video eventually get made. In fact, it's probably one that's been sitting in my brain longer than any other, but for reasons you'll see, it's been a little difficult to bring myself to make it. I have to also give a big spoiler warning for Final Fantasy IX. This video will be discussing the ending in order to convey what I need to, so here's your warning for that. If you like nostalgia-based retrospectives, especially for RPGs, make sure you hit subscribe and turn the bell on so you don't miss out on the weekly nostalgia sleepovers we have playing games in my VR retro bedroom. I've broken down the deep meaning Final Fantasy IX has for me into 3 layers, each one enhancing my love and respect for the game more than the last. So yes, these are also in chronological order as I experienced them so that you can kind of relive that journey with me as the game continued to take on new meaning, as I moved from teenage life to adult life to parent life. The first layer is one most gamers are likely to share with me. That is that the game is just so darn good, objectively speaking. It's not perfect, of course. The pacing can get a little weird, the battle system is a bit unbalanced, etc., but it was about as close to a perfect game that you could get for its time, and even now, 25 years later, still holds up extremely well. When it first came out in the year 2000, it was obviously the most impressive Final Fantasy on the PlayStation 1, graphically, technically speaking, but I think it goes beyond just the technical stuff. The game features an art style that is truly magical, embracing the whimsy of a fairy tale storybook without sacrificing the dark undertones of a serious story. And it did this on a level that no game has been able to recapture ever since. 9 is also known for being the game that the series creator, Hironobu Sakaguchi, wanted to intentionally bring back to the series' roots, giving his original vision one last moment in the spotlight before it went off and became something else, which it certainly did, starting with Final Fantasy X, and especially after 10. Everything about the game itself, as just a game, was absolutely the peak of the golden age of RPGs. The soundtrack is one of the best ever made, the plot and characters were endearing to the max, and it even stuck the landing with arguably one of the best and most satisfying endings to any RPG ever. Well, we all know what makes any game truly great though is our personal connection to it. Where and when we play something often changes how we feel about it, and for me, this was the game. It was the first Final Fantasy I owned myself, rather than having to use a sibling's copy. It was just after I had gotten my own TV and my own PS1 console in my own room, and I could play it to my heart's content without being bothered. Final Fantasy IX was a massive part of my childhood, and became a special treasure for me almost instantly. I feel like a lot of people had a similar experience with it, and for most, that's where it stopped. But for me, the game being just fantastic on its own merits and being a meaningful part of growing up is simply layer number 1. As you'll see, time has only woven this game deeper into the fabric of my life. Layer number 2 came years later, once I got married and had kids of my own. You'd probably not be surprised to hear all 3 of my kids grew up with game controllers in their hands and watched me play stuff all the time. I mean, I first played through Twilight Princess when my son was a newborn, when I would wake up to feed him his midnight bottle while my wife slept. He would turn his head to the bright screen as he drank and watch with fascination, so that game in its entirety is likely burned deep into the recesses of his subconscious somewhere. Anyway, me and all my kids started playing games together when they were pretty young, and we got through a few big ones all the way, like Ocarina of Time, Shadow of the Colossus, and Ratchet and Clank. But soon I introduced them to RPGs, and Final Fantasy IX was one of the first. At the time, my youngest was just starting to read decently well, so each of us, including my wife in a rare turn of events, took a role to read, and we went through the entire game, narrating it together. I was Zidane, my wife was Dagger, my oldest daughter was Freya, my son Vivi, and my youngest daughter Aiko, with me filling in the rest as needed. It was a magical experience that I'll never forget, especially seeing their reactions to certain plot twists or FMV cutscenes. But the powerful ending of the game was really what brought us all together. For any of you that know, it's a bittersweet close to the story that ends with the camera panning out from the castle of Alexandria and flows right into the theme song called Melodies of Life as the credits roll. It's a total tearjerker moment already, but suddenly it became the anthem for me and my kids, and especially for my oldest daughter, who really took a liking to it. It immediately entered her personal playlist, and our love for that song has kind of become something special that her and I share together. So if the game wasn't amazing enough already, now it meant something even deeper for me and my family. That's layer number 2. What I didn't know is that years later, still in 2023, things got unexpectedly more potent than ever before. You see, growing up, I was a big fan of utilizing the classic Final Fantasy feature of renaming characters. I was always the main character, my friends the supporting cast, my current girlfriends as the heroines, etc., etc. But in Final Fantasy IX, I always renamed Vivi to Steven. Steven was my cousin and one of my best friends all growing up. We'd gamed together since we were literally toddlers and shared a special love for RPGs and Final Fantasy. Well, like Vivi, Steven was very soft-spoken, and he suffered from some health conditions that made him kind of a somber guy, even as a kid. As a teenager, I thought Vivi, the timid, lovable, but powerful mage and sidekick to the main character, was a perfect fit for my friend Steven, so I always assigned him to that character. I had no idea just how prophetic this practice would prove to be. Let's quickly review Vivi's subplot in the game itself. Vivi is a black mage, which is a type of being that we really don't know anything about at the start of the game. As the plot unfolds, however, we learn that black mages are actually mass-produced magic users given sentience to be used as weapons of war. This causes Vivi to start to question his life, existence, and his purpose. For example, does he even have a soul? The plot thickens further when he discovers that he and the other black mages only have a shelf life of about 2 years, at which point they simply die. Or as the folks in the Black Mage Village put it, they stop moving. This forces Vivi into his most trying crisis, as he struggles to learn the meaning of death and digest its imposing implications. Well, in the end, Vivi triumphs. The conclusion to his subplot is that he eventually comes to terms with it all, and instead of focusing on death, chooses to focus on what it means to truly live. This empowers him to be a great force for good and positivity for the rest of the team in the closing stages of the game. After the final battle, the main character Zidane leaves the party and is thought by the other characters to have perished, but ends up making a grand return for the final scene. However, There is a time jump of about 1 year before he returns, and in that time, Vivi has passed away, never getting the chance to say goodbye to Zidane properly. If you haven't guessed by now, in 2023, my cousin Steven passed away unexpectedly, succumbing to his health conditions. It absolutely wrecked me, and in a cruel turn of fate, his funeral services ended up falling right on my birthday. As I reflected on him and the times we'd had together, it didn't take long before this poetic connection to Vivi dawned on me. Even though Vivi does not get to say goodbye to Zidane, he does leave a letter behind, which the player gets to read as a sort of epilogue in the game. To say it's bittersweet is a severe understatement. Allow me to quote some of his letter now that you have the context of where I'm coming from. And thank goodness for editing so you don't have to hear me start to cry as I read it, because I definitely will. You already had to put up with that when the game broke me on my recent playthrough on stream. Card at the top if you want to see that. So, speaking to the main character Zidane, who in my playthrough was me, Vivi, who is Steven, says the following. You taught us all how important life is. You taught me that life doesn't last forever. That's why we have to help each other and live life to the fullest. Even if you say goodbye, you'll always be in our hearts. So I know we're not alone anymore. Why I was born, how I wanted to live. Thanks for giving me time to think, to keep doing what you set your heart on. It's a very hard thing to do. We were all so courageous. What to do when I felt lonely? That was the only thing you couldn't teach me. But we need to figure out the answer for ourselves. I'm so happy I met everyone. I wish we could have gone on more adventures. But I guess we all have to say goodbye someday. Everyone, thank you. Farewell. And that's layer number 3. It goes without saying, but Final Fantasy IX at this point has transcended being just a great game for me. It's the best, or one of the best Final Fantasy games, objectively speaking, and a big part of my younger years. But it also represents a meaningful bond with my kids and family. And now, it's a cryptic message from my departed friend. A reminder from the afterlife that forming bonds with others and creating memories with those we love is what truly matters in this life. Go on adventures. Live every day to the fullest with no regrets. Enjoy the good times and have the perception to see the good in the bad times as well, because one day, all of us will eventually stop moving. And that's okay. Vivi learned it. Steven learned it. And I just pray that all of us can follow their examples and do the same. Oh, well, I can give myself a pat on the back for finally bringing myself to make this video. I appreciate you watching it and would love to hear both your experiences with Final Fantasy IX and which other games out there you might have that special connection with. Talk to you soon.